Good morning. It's about 8:30. We've managed to, get up and have breakfast and do a few morning chores and extricate ourselves from Flanders Bay near Riverhead, Long Island, and get out to the Great Peconic Bay. The winds are still defying the 5 to 10 that the forecast keeps insisting on. And it kept up all night and into this morning. It was a bit worrying overnight, although the anchor held fine. But we're going to take advantage of it today and make our way back to 3 Mile Harbor, down east, as the saying goes, downwind and back east, which, as I mentioned yesterday, that'll position us tomorrow to make the crossing back to Pine Island Marina a day early, so we can get home and help my wife with her injured knee. So this should be much more pleasant sail than yesterday. We're on a pretty broad reach. We'll have current against us this morning. I haven't checked, but I would follow yesterday's pattern. And with us this afternoon, we're doing about 4 knots with reefed main and jib. And that's fast enough. I don't want to risk breaking anything. So we'll continue along. Took a bit of a turn around the buoy at the western end of Great Peconic Bay and turned a little more downwind, and when we did, the jib started getting blanketed by the main. So we broke out the whisker pole. I wasn't quite sure if it was going to work for this leg because we're still about 40 degrees off of straight downwind, but it is. I think we're right at the borderline. But I'll let you take a look. So this jib is still reefed just a little bit, but it is keeping the air, and we're back up to our 4 knots or so. So there's the top of the mast, and as you can see, the marker to the right is at about 45 degrees. The wind isn't quite that far off of straight behind us, but it's close, so I'm calling that 35 to 40 degrees. And that would mean there's a downwind arc of 70 to 80 degrees where the whisker pole can be used to set up a wing-on-wing situation. That's using the main and the Genoa with the UPS, which we haven't seen yet on this trip. There's at least the potential for a wing-on-wing using the UPS and the Genoa. So that would be something to see. Maybe, well, it probably won't happen this trip. We don't have something that's going that downwind in light enough breezes to try that, but an adventure for the future. We are just south of Robbins Island at the place where, Little Narragansett Bay and Great Narragansett Bay meet. And we're fighting about 2 knots of current here, and it's a little bit bumpy as a result. I think things should even out as we get into Little Peconic Bay. about 11:15, and we're well into our transit of Little Peconic Bay. It is much smoother out here away from that congested area south of Robbins Island. The wind seems to be moderating, and so is our speed, but we're still doing between 2.5 and 3 knots. Close to straight downwind at this point. We turned a little bit more to the northeast at Robbins Island there. So we should get to the entrance to Little Peconic Bay, if the wind doesn't diminish anymore, a little before noon. We are now at the exit from Little Peconic Bay. And there's some lumps in the water here as well. Not too bad. It's about 20 after 12, and I think it's time for a midday look at the chart. So we've got a small scale, large area, for us anyway, chart that will show us our entire course today. So we spent the night down here in Flanders Bay near Riverhead and came out into Great Peconic Bay, along here, wing on wing. Took a little corner here just south of Robbins Island and crossed Little Peconic Bay to the exit point here. And now we're crossing Noyac Bay, and we've almost entered this area here to take us through this passage south of Shelter Island and over to 3 Mile Harbor. So right in here, hopefully I'll get a nice shot. There's a pair of ferries that go back and forth. So, as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, there's a pair of ferries that go back and forth here pretty much constantly, and so maybe we'll be able to take a shot of those. Usually I have to dodge them if I'm powering through here, but since I'm sailing today, they'll have to dodge me. Here, crossing right in front of our bow, is a pair of those ferries that go back and forth here between the South Fork of Long Island to my right and the south shore of Shelter Island on my left. Actually, in taking a closer look at that ferry operation as I was kind of drifting by, there are actually 4 very similar ferries in operation, and 2 slips on each side, which explains why there almost always seems to be 2 in motion at any point in time. It's a pretty efficient operation. Cedar Point, which is part of Long Island, kind of marks one end of the southern passage around Shelter Island. So once we clear this, we can hang a right and make our way a few miles down the coast to the entrance to 3 Mile Harbor. A few years ago I read that they were trying to make that abandoned lighthouse into some kind of bed and breakfast type thing. Don't know if that worked out. I don't know if we're going to get dunked by the weather or not. I just heard some thunder back there. But at least we're having a very nice sail down here on the last leg of the trip. A couple of nautical miles to the 3 Mile Harbor entrance on a close reach, I guess we'd call it. Doing between 4 and 5 knots. Pretty nice. Well, it's now 5 o'clock, and I'm sorry you missed some of the intervening
events, but that squall line passed over and resulted in only a few showers. I wouldn't really call it a shower. It was just enough rain to get stuff wet. And then it blew through. There was nothing else in it aside from the rain. So that was pretty much a non-event. We hit that when we were still out in Gardiner's Bay before we entered the harbor. So entering the harbor was another non-event. And we anchored somewhere out in the general middle, and the reason is weather related. Now we're still getting pretty strong breezes, and they seem to be building from the, again, southwest. And ordinarily I might try to hide. There's some kind of hills and trees on the western side of the anchorage that I could try to get some shelter from, but there's all kinds of weather warnings about thunderstorms and flooding and yada yada. Not worried about flooding, obviously, I'm in a boat, but apparently we're going to get some weather overnight, and an event like that, who knows where the wind is going to come from. So I figured the middle, especially in a very large harbor like this one, is a good place to be, so that's where I am. It's a little lumpy out here, but not so much that it's going to bother me. I'll take a shot of the harbor, but I won't try to talk in it because I'm afraid the wind noise will be too much. So that's got to be pushing 20 knots. And again, there's no mention in the forecast of that aside from the thunderstorm warnings. So, but and hope it came up on the camera. We're actually to the point of raising little whitecaps here. So on the one hand, we're concerned about the windage on the boat, but on the other hand, given the weather forecast, I think I really am going to need to put up the pop top enclosure. So there's a trade-off. I will be, of course, breaking out the anchor as I did last night to have overboard, to throw overboard in case. And we'll just have to see how things unfold. All right, we've made some preparations for heavy weather. Fortunately, the sky is clouded over, which allowed us to put up the pop-top enclosure. If the sun was still shining, that would, make it an oven in here, and the weather is already oppressive enough without adding that. So, but we've kept the front kind of open and tied back with some ropes here tied to the forward lower shrouds and back to my deck organizer since it was there and handy. So I guess the railing would probably work if you lack a deck organizer. So we're getting some breeze through here, and I've managed to crack the hatch here just a little under the cover, so get a little bit of breeze up into the V berth area. And we've got the anchor, the secondary anchor, rigged once again for a quick toss overboard. Which is, I guess, is a bit of a segue to me talking about the anchor roller that I added last fall, and now I've had an opportunity to try out for a few times, and it's working out, I have to say, as well as I hoped it would. Not having to carry the anchor forward from the cockpit to the bow is a great pleasure. And I have played around with getting it all set up with the anchor line attached and the anchor line run back to the cockpit, and then releasing the anchor from the cockpit. It needs more work, but I think the concept is there. And so the full plan is to have a second anchor roller on the bowsprit. It would be symmetrical, which is a very important consideration for me, and have another similar anchor to the one I've got up there. So there would be a permanently mounted second anchor, which would be a little more convenient than what I've been having to do here with Fortress anchor. Plus, I'm not all that convinced that the Fortress anchor is really a good emergency anchor. It's too light, and apparently, really, unless you have no momentum whatsoever, unless you're not moving. I think I'm saying this backwards. If you are moving, the anchor won't reach the bottom. It's too light. It'll just skim through the water. But it's all I've got, so we've rigged it up just in case. But that's the plan for the bowsprit and anchor rollers up there.
Well, about 8 o'clock in the evening, and the wind has died off to just about nothing. Boats in the anchorage are pointed every which way, which is better than the alternative. So that's just still leaves the thunderstorm warnings as the unknown for the evening. Good morning. It's Thursday morning, and as predicted, we're having a rainy day. So far it's been showers off and on, so hopefully this current iteration of rain is more of that and not a more permanent situation. But I do have the pop top down and the sliding hatch shut, although I don't have the hatchway in. That's keeping the cabin pretty dry, and I'm staying reasonably dry under the bimini, which is nice. There's not a lot of wind, so it's not a driving rain, but we do have, again as predicted, a breeze 5 to 10 out of the east. So all in all, it's not unpleasant at all. I do have rain gear, but it's still pretty warm and humid, and it would just be all clammy to put it on. So I think this is better. So as I said, we are ending the trip a day early so I can go home and help out my wife, who has a knee that is turned against her, and so we'll be making our way, albeit a little slowly, about 3 knots at the moment, first across Gardiner's Bay, through the race, and back to Pine Island Marina. And it looks like, just by happenstance, we're going to hit the race right about its slack current at 1 p.m. Sometimes things just work out. So last night we did get the violent thunderstorms that were again predicted. They came through at around 11, lasted half an hour to an hour. I'm not sure. I had kind of I didn't go to bed. I didn't want to be up in the V berth when excuse me, when it hit. So I kind of dozed off and must have been sleeping pretty soundly, because it did wake me up, but I woke up really groggy. So, but to the extent that I could see what was going on, the water was getting whipped up pretty good by the wind, and the rain was pretty torrential. We may have dragged anchor a little bit. My anchor alarm went off But if we did, we didn't go very far. So all to the good. You know. Would have been hard to react well if the anchor had just broken loose. And this morning, and this is the first time this has ever happened, I couldn't pull the anchor up. I had to kind of motor over it to break it free. So that's an indication that it dug in pretty well. So that's the current status report. And we are just tooling along slowly in limited visibility. Sorry there hasn't been more filming, but conditions have turned somewhat adversarial. So stronger winds, more rain, need for foul weather gear obviously. So we've passed into Long Island Sound by this point, and we're still about an hour out from Pine Island Marina. I've had more fun. Well, it's the end of a trip. I'm back at Pine Island Marina. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's raining cats and dogs. Has been for about the last 45 minutes, which is going to make the process of packing stuff up to the car and then rowing ashore after I put the boat back on the mooring. Interesting, but well, it's only water. So thanks for coming along, and see you next time.